Therefore, at this time, I will call the meeting to order and call on Pastor Ruth Sorenson-Prokosch for our opening prayer.
Good morning. This morning, in Pastor Peter's sermon, I heard that lovely story about Buzz Aldrin. And one of the things that I thought was so great about that story was the pause that Buzz asked everyone to take. And so we're going to pause as we're shifting from worship and coffee and fellowship into our meeting time. We're going to practice taking a little pause. So we're going to do a Lectio Divina practice as we center ourselves for this meeting. Just going to move this. Okay, short person mic time. So as we begin, I invite you first to just pay attention to how you're sitting. Feel your feet on the ground. Breathe in and notice the air enter your body. Breathe out and feel your shoulders relax. Just pay attention to your breath. For our Lectio Divina practice, we're going to listen to one verse 3 times, and I'm going to ask you some questions to ponder during silence. So as I read the first time, I just ask that you pay attention to your breath. Jesus says, "I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit. Because apart from me, you can do nothing." As you listen a second time, pay attention to what images come to mind or what words stand out to you. I am the vine, and you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit. Because apart from me, you can do nothing. As I read it one more time, I ask you to think about how you have felt Christ abiding with you. Jesus said, "I am the vine and you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit. Because apart from me, you can do nothing." Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for your promised presence, for the ways that you have nourished us, fed us, and cared for us. Bless this time and this meeting as we tend to our mission and our life together. Give us wisdom, kindness, and courage, and help us to remember that we abide in you and you in us. It's in Christ's name that we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Ruth. At this time, I'd call for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Who's the second?
Rick. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? The agenda is approved. And I'll call on our Acting Secretary, Deb Cordes, for comment on the quorum.
We are at quorum
We are at quorum
with 63.
with 63. The minutes of January 31st, 2021 and March 21st, 21 were not made available to the congregation in advance of this. I therefore call for a motion to table approval of the minutes. Motion Wetland, Kim Wetland. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, you've got that. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The minutes are tabled. I carry my notes in my phone these days, so give me just a second here. My report to you is more a message than a report. My message is, first of all, it is really, really great to see all of you and to be with you today. And I'm so thankful that the clouds broke, the sun came out, and all of our fears were allayed. This is the first congregational meeting in over a year, as I don't have to tell you. But it will be the first of many that we are going to have over the next year. We have learned a lot during this pandemic. We have learned that the pandemic, while it may have brought many people to their knees before God because of the danger to them and the loss, it also brought opportunity for us to explore new ways of being together, and I am so grateful that we have such a talented team that has done that. However, many of the important items that we had hoped to address this past year had to be deferred because we couldn't get together, and that will change in the coming months. We need to heal, we need to grow, we need to seek God's will for our congregation. How are we called to share the power of God's love? My message today is not so much what we're talking about it, but how we're going to do it. We're going to be aided by our involvement in a process that the St. Paul Synod has launched called Liberating Structures for Mission. And that means that we're going to take a hard look at how we do business so that we can be more thoughtful, more effective, more conversational with each other, more flexible, more nimble, all those things. It's how we engage in discussion, and most of us have been crying out for discussion these past few months. One of the approaches that you'll see from this liberating structures approach, so we learned, some of us council members who were involved in a meeting a couple of weeks ago, is that congregations do a lot better at approaching the issues of governance when they do so in an attitude of prayer and contemplation. And Pastor Ruth guided us through some of that today. And at first, many of you, like me, might feel that's kind of a waste of time. What are we doing in a meeting, spending all that time praying? But experience has shown that congregations that do that and leadership that does that not only get closer to God's will, but have more efficient and harmonious meetings. So having said that, I look forward to continuing the discussions of all the issues that face us today in the coming months, and stay tuned for the Liberating Structures approach. We'll tell you more about it later on. And with that, I will turn it over to Pastor Peter for a ministry update.
Just a couple of quick notes. So grateful for all of your presence and participation today, both those who are here gathered in our parking lot and those who are gathered virtually as well. So this day, as a ministry update, I want to add our collective thanks and gratitude for the legion of volunteers who have worked so hard over the last year and a half to keep us connected to one another. In the sermon I preached earlier today as a part of worship, we talk about how important it is to remain connected to the vine. Jesus says, I am the vine and you are the branches. And so this vine, the branches, all of us, would have withered had we not been able to stay connected. And I am so grateful that we had such a remarkable effort put forth by a variety of people. Chief among them, he's going to shrug when I say this, but Chris Thornton, who's standing over here to the left, not only serves faithfully as the treasurer of this congregation, but has become our primary technologist. And we are so grateful. None of this would have been possible without Chris's efforts and ongoing. And not here today because we let him take a weekend off, I guess. It was Chris's brother, Bill, who has stepped up in significant ways around helping us adapt our sanctuary with new equipment that helps integrate all of this. And we will all have the more vibrant worship and life together as a result to their efforts. So to the Thornton brothers, thank you. We are so grateful. And another unsung hero oftentimes, Erica Warkentine, who is such a gifted person in so many ways, decided to learn new things this year as well and has been so invested in helping record and capture sound and now helping us with our new sound system. Erica really has gone to some great lengths to be a part of the vibrancy of behind the scenes that makes our worship so vibrant, and we are grateful for her. And the list goes on and on. In particular, your staff of Prince of Peace have worked very, very hard under some very challenging circumstances to keep things flowing. And I could not be more pleased and proud of the work that's been done by the staff of the congregation. By Milt and Kathy and Abe and Melissa and Kristen in our office and Steve, our janitor, and Karen, our bookkeeper, and and then I have these delightful colleagues in Betsy and Ruth, and their ability to continue to keep us focused on ministry has been a real blessing to me and to help keep us moving in that correct direction. And so I give thanks, Corey, for her youth ministry as well. And later this summer, we'll be saying goodbye to Corey. And so, and welcoming in a new member to our team to help us with our faith formation work. And so grateful for all of that. Also, a word of thanks to all who participated in our congregational survey that was done electronically last month. Over the course of 2 weeks, we had about 100 people fill that out on behalf of almost 170 family members to give us some help in our planning and our efforts, figuring out what's working and what needs to change and what can we hold on to as we move into the future. Because that's the last thing I want to talk about is that there's this temptation, and if you read a devotion I wrote a few weeks back, you read that I talk about this, that there's this sense that as life returns back to normal, or that at least it feels safer to begin doing things that we were familiar with in ways that we were comfortable with in the past, there is this longing to return back. And that's very tempting. And I echo that as well. But I believe that God truthfully is calling us somewhere else. God is calling us forward, not backwards. God is calling us forward. And so my hope for this congregation and my prayer for us this day is that we continue to keep our sights set forward, because that's where God is calling to us from. God is pulling us into someplace new, making something new of this church, making something new of each of us. And so let's give thanks this day that God calls us forward. There is so much going on in the life of this church as we plan for this future forward. We're busy at work imagining a new program year ahead and how to make existing ministries more vibrant with all that we've learned and all that we've experienced. We're grateful for the hard work that our leadership continues to do in the deliberation, and our property team that has been wrestling with these needed upgrades to our facilities and the renewal that we need to pull together for not only physical structure but our spiritual structures. And so be thinking about that year of renewal to come for all of us. With that, I give you thanks.
Thank you, Pastor Peter. Before we begin the business, a few housekeeping things. If you have comments to make, and if you are able, please approach the orange-covered microphone here so that everyone can hear you and we can pick it up on Zoom. If you can't do that, perhaps we can get one of our more able members to listen to your comment and repeat it at the microphone so that we get a clear sense of what you want to say. And Peter, how are we handling the Zoom comments? Okay. So Pastor Peter is monitoring the Zoom rooms. Wave your hand or put it in the chat. You can wave your hand physically or virtually. They got that little wave your hand thing on Zoom. And please identify yourself so that Deb Cordes, who is acting in behalf of Karen Carr, our secretary today, can get it all down in the record, although we are taping it, so we have backup. So on to new business. The first item of business is a motion from the Congregational Council. The Congregation of Prince of Peace Lutheran Church, Roseville, Minnesota, adopts the 2021-22 operating budget as presented. And to start off the discussion, we'll have Chris Thornton come and explain the handouts that you have and our current status and what the next year looks like.
Morning, everyone. So I am going to be giving you the short version of the budget this year because I wasn't expecting, that's right, pause for applause. I wasn't expecting that the weather was going to hold out and thought we may be on borrowed time. So that's all I planned for. Also, the format's a little clunky if I'm waving you around to different pieces of paper. But the one you're going to be looking at today is the green handout you hopefully picked up in the table over here. And there are two sides to that. The first side is going to be the one that doesn't have a blue stripe down the middle of it, okay? And these are the financial results for the current fiscal year, which ends at in 3 days here. So we don't have the entire month of June represented here, but we have feathered in what we expect from the budget we would receive and spend during the month of June here, and that's represented in the forecast column, the FCST. So if you look down the page here, I'll take you right away, just looking at the top area, or sorry, I'm gonna actually, yeah, that's where I'm gonna start. I mislabeled this page. So the top half is what you wanna see. It's by budget midline, the stuff you're used to seeing. What you'll find here is if you look to the bottom, we're in the black happily this year by about $16,000. So give yourself a round of applause there. Another good year for the church budget here. Now, how did we get here is a little bit less positive, and that is we did save a lot of money this year by not worshiping in the sanctuary or using it to the extent that we normally do. And so if you look down the expense columns, kind of better or worse, you can see that almost everything is better than we had budgeted for. And we were expecting some sort of pandemic when we put this budget together. We just didn't expect it to go on quite so long. So expense is a lot lower, but if you look to the top side of the income statement here where income is, you can see income's also a lot lower than we were expecting as well. So we ended up saving a lot more than we came up short on income, and so we ended up in the black. Good outcome overall, but this is going to be hurting us a little bit as we go forward here. Now, some of the savings are in things like that, like personnel. If you remember, we hired Kristen this year a little bit later than we had originally planned. That had some savings. And also, we had put in a lot of, you would expect with the pandemic going on, healthcare costs and things like that would skyrocket. We didn't see that this year, but that may be coming. And so we're planning for that kind of stuff in the year forward. So a lot of the savings that we had this year, and as we come back to worshiping in person and using the building more, we're not going to see those same sorts of savings that we had. So if you remember last year, the budget on the expense side was kept almost exactly flat. I think it was within a couple $100 of the year before. So as I've discussed just now, this year will not be the same story. So if you flip the page over to the one with the blue stripe, and the same display is now on the bottom of the page again because I messed it up. If this is the only mistake I make, then we're doing well. So taking a look at the blue column here is the new budget for the year. And you can see that, again, the better, worse columns to the right, those are relative to the last year's budget. You can see we're going to be spending about $34,000 more than we did last year. So it's about a 6.2% increase. And to offset that, we're looking for an increase in giving as well. But if you look at the very top line, the contributions line, we're only asking for 3.7%. And that's because the line items here where we're seeing some increases in expense are actually in areas that are kind of unusual items, I would say. So if you look on the right-hand side, you can see in the expense column that the biggest, one of the biggest increases is personnel, up almost 5%. Part of what's going on here, we sort of have three things that are driving this higher this year. One is we're not, taking these savings on benefits, and so we may get some savings there, maybe not. But we're giving our staff have done, and I've seen behind the curtain, as Peter alluded to, I have seen how the sausage is made around here, and I am honestly stunned. Peter didn't thank himself in the last year here for everything that was going on here, and I just have been stunned by the staff and the dedication everybody has had here toward putting the worship and the creativity and everything to keep this thing interesting going forward. So we have a increase for the staff here. Now, it's not anything significant. It's only really cost of living, and at some point, we'd like to get to the point where we can start to give them a little bit more of a meritorious increase than just keeping up with inflation, which might be difficult this year. So that's about a third of the increase. Another third is Peter has looking to take a sabbatical starting late this year, and so he will be gone for a period of time, in theory. So we are feathered in here a replacement pastor who will carry on his duties in the meantime. Now, if you look up above, the other income, that other income is up by like 19% here. A big part of that is because we have applied for grant funding that would cover this replacement pastor for the period that he's gone. So we expect that we will get something there that will help us kind of offset that cost. And so we have higher costs and we have higher income from some of these things to offset those. So that's why we're not asking for quite as much on the contribution side. And then the other piece of that is related to some of the video stuff that we have been doing as well. I have been working pretty much every weekend and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for the last 15 months on this stuff. And unfortunately, that can't continue. So we are looking to hire a part-time person to really become the expert in the technology and train up a cadre of volunteers to really manage that and keep sort of a schedule around that. And so that'll be a part-time position that we will be posting relatively soon here. So those are kind of the three things on the personnel side. I thought I said this was going to be the short version. The other big increase is property, and Peter alluded to some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about here with the roof and some other improvements that need to be made. A big part of this too, if you remember a couple of years ago to balance the budget, we had pulled back on some savings that we put into the building every year. So we save several $1,000s every year toward major improvements. To balance the budget, we pulled that all out one year, and then we had a plan to ladder that back in over a 3-year period. So this is the third year, I believe, of that 3-year period. And we'll be back to, it could be the second year. Some of you would have to check me on that, but we'll get there. And so that's part of the increase. And then the rest of it is, just some higher costs that we're seeing. And then also some of our members who have been caring for certain areas of the building are no longer able to do that or no longer with us. And so as we look forward to having to have those services performed professionally, that's a little bit of a higher cost in maintaining the building as well. So those are really the biggest increases in the budget overall here. Everything else is relatively unchanged to the prior year with a little bit of increases as we kind of come back into the building here. So what we're all told, right, 6.2% increase in expenses. We're only asking for 3.7 over last year's budget. But I will point out to you that our forecast for what we're going to get this year means we're going to fall looks like we're going to fall maybe about $20,000 short of what we asked for. So over the last budget, it's 3.7%. Over what we've actually received from people, it's really more like double that. So don't hear 3.6% and go do that math and update your giving. Here instead more like about 8%. And by all means, factor that math in when you consider your giving for next year. So with that, I will hand it over to any questions. I think on Zoom we can take them either via chat, or we should be able to get audio from Zoom as well. And then on the premises here, if you want to step forward to the mic, happy to take any questions at this time. We do have somebody advancing toward the mic here on site for those of you on Zoom who can't see.
Is this okay now?
Yes.
Okay, very good. A couple of questions I would have regarding the budget, and to help me understand it would be, what is our current membership? And over the last, because we're talking about a roof for 25 years. Okay. Any better? Yeah. All right. What was our membership? How has our membership changed in the last 25 years? And that would be very helpful in understanding where we're going forward.
Sure. Yeah, good question. So that was Marge, for those of you who can't see her on
I have
on Zoom
two
here.
after that.
So membership, think about, or when we think about the budget here, it's roughly, I would say 200 giving units is the way we kind of think about it, so 200 families. I think 25 years ago, I don't have those numbers exactly, but I have heard it said that the church is roughly half the size it was, you know, back in probably that time frame.
Okay.
So call it 400
Okay.
giving units at that time.
A former teacher, from time to time, people on our staff had sabbaticals, but they had to be here for quite a while. What is the synod's guidelines for sabbaticals? How long do you have to be working someplace before you get a sabbatical?
I don't know the answer to that. 5 years. 5 years, I'm told.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Anything on Zoom, Peter? Okay.
Do we have any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the budget as presented signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you very much, Chris. We now have a motion from the Congregational Council that reads, the Congregation of Prince of Peace Lutheran Church, Roseville, Minnesota, authorizes spending up to $304,000 for the purpose of repairing designated areas of the church roof, installation of required safety rooftop barriers, typo in there, and installation of an interior access to the roof. The project will be financed via borrowing from existing Diestler funds to be repaid pursuant to a funding strategy to be submitted to the congregation for approval this fall 2021. And I'll open it up for discussion. I should note that, am I on here? I should note that the handout kind of summarizes the main things that will be done and the main rationale for borrowing from these funds in the interim until we can approve a permanent funding strategy. Marge?
I'm not always the sharpest tack in the box here. I get confused. I hear you saying these things need to be done, but then you say more time is needed to finish the work of the Generosity Committee, and what's not clear to me, my concern about going into Rose's money for this on any level is the temptation that it will not be paid back. If we are half of what we were 25 years ago, that says something. What are we going to be in 5 years? What are the projections for 10 years? Are we overstaffed?
Thank you.
I don't know. They don't say. That's the thing that.
Chris Henningsen. Reading this white paper is the first information that I've read about what needs to be done and what it's going to cost. There may have been stuff on the web or something, but my laziness of reading stuff that's on the web, I haven't read it. I haven't seen anything in the mail. And my question is the number, $300,000. My first reaction to that was that sounds like an
That's
awfully
Chris.
lot of money to repair a flat roof of the size ours is. And so I ask, is there somebody that's been putting this information together that could tell us specifically what all is going to be done besides just what's on this white sheet of paper?
Let's see, do we have Dan or Russ in the audience? Dan Nuyar, Russ Stoley, either of you gentlemen wish to comment on that? I will, before they come up, I will just say that the $304,000 number, as you read, includes not just the roof, but also creating an interior access to the roof. Right now, the only access to the roof is by putting a very heavy ladder up on the edge, which isn't always possible and is dangerous for both operators and the roof. We also need, by code, to have a safety barrier along one of the walls. It's required for anybody that does maintenance up there to have that safety barrier. Okay, which one of you wants to go first here?
I can go first.
Okay.
So the essence of the roof replacement is the whole flat roof at this level going down both sides of the gym and up to the narthex, where that is a more recent roof. The prices are based on a vendor we had out over a year ago when we were looking at what it would cost if we put in a new roof underneath potential solar panels that were being discussed at that time. And so what Dan and I asked them to do was to come up with a plan that would not only take care of our existing leaks, but also improve the drainage so that we no longer have puddling that's been going on for the last 20 years. And a lot of the puddling has had to do with the number of projects we've pieced together into the existing roof with high parts and low parts and no kind of general plan, so to speak, other than hoping we could catch it in a project like this. So the price, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but basically we've been asking the vendor to update us as the pricing has gone up for, you name it, everything's code related, right? But where we are right now is that that the price has more or less gone up, would you say 25% since about a year ago? And unfortunately what we're hearing is there's very little end in sight because there's not only roof material, there's insulation, and there's actually metal that's involved in doing the finish edges on the new roof. So that and adding in what we think are pretty decent estimates of what the roof access and what the barrier fence are, and we put in a contingency of, I think, 12 or 15%. I don't remember, Michael, do you?
I recall 15%.
Might be 15% to take into account what we may end up with price increases as well as unforeseens when they start working on the roof. You want to take over? Hopefully that helps.
Okay, and in adding to what Russ said, on the Wednesday meeting, Russ reminded me that I forgot to say, except for the asphalt roof, the other 3 types of roofs will be a one-piece system that would stop the leaking conditions we are having right now. It would be more of a pool liner type fabric. And so we wouldn't have the problems we're having now in the future. And the other thing, to add to what he just said, the roof will go from the north corner all the way around to the northwest entry, and including the triangular piece of roof in the northwest entry. So it, and Chris's question, it is all the flat roofs except for the Northex, and the Northex is 11 years old. So going back to answer Marge's kind of inference, we would be good for a long time. Everything would be new except for the shingles on the sanctuary, and those will last a long time. So as far as being waterproof under a roof, we will be good for a long, long time. And I thought there was one more thing I was going to say, but now I can't remember.
For solar? Preparation for solar in case it was.
And yes, this was in preparation for solar. That's what got the ball started, and we've had multiple leaks over the last few years based on the roof age. And if we go with solar, you have to do a new roof. You do them both at the same time. They both carry the same life expectancy. And that was the goal. And we've been talking solar here for probably 10 years when it first came up.
And to clarify, this request does not include anything for solar other than creating a roof that would accept solar. We're not authorizing the installation of solar with this vote.
Okay, and the one last comment I was going to make is, and this goes back to Chris's question too, this is one estimate based on today's economy to get bids on a roof. Bids are only good from 7 days to 2 weeks based on the material climate right now. And that is the reason this is being handled in this way, to have the money approved to move on a low bid. We have not shopped this yet. This is one estimate for one type of roof, of which there are 4 types of roof that we covered on Wednesday. And so we will shop this and hopefully cut the price quite a bit. But this is a starting point, and it's based on today's economy. This was the only way to get this done.
Thank you.
Dan Wagner, I have a question, or rather a comment. Most of you know that my background is as a CEO of a college, university, and later in Minnesota in another type of activity. Back in the 80s, my institution was a very large one, 5,000 full-time students and 17,000 part-time on 4 campuses. Our one campus in Superior, Wisconsin, was a leader in alternate energy, including wind and solar, and we competed nationally for one of 4 available grants for 2-year colleges to have an alternate energy lab, and we won that for Superior, Wisconsin. So I am a solar fan and an alternate energy fan. So as I get further down here, you'll understand why I'm giving you the background. Our home in Rice Lake, Wisconsin also was a passive solar home designed, and our current home, during the winter, our energy is nearly zero because it's also a passive solar home. So bear that in mind when I say that I'm a solar fan. However, we don't want the congregation to have the understanding that we're locked into solar, because we're not. At this point in time, it's obvious we have to make that decision, because there are other alternatives to this roof. One might be a roof that is not going to be built for solar, and that cost of that might be, who knows, 1/2 the price. Solar, again, is a very interesting concept, a desirable one, and one sometimes under very certain conditions has a payback, and under other conditions it doesn't. So I would bring this up as a point that perhaps needs to be talked about before we are locked into the solar track. And this comes from a solar fan, okay?
Thank you, Dan.
Kent Olson. I support this idea, this motion, to do this roof now to get it fixed. We don't have the additional future costs of leaks, so we can operate easily without having to make those maneuvers. I also support the idea of borrowing from the Diestler fund right now so that we can get this done this year and have more time to talk about alternative uses of that funds and how we would finance, going back to asking for more money to finance the roof. So I support the motion as is.
Thank you, Ken. We have Martina Fox. Can you plug her through the audio, or? Go ahead, Martina.
Hi, everyone. This is Martina. I just wanted to just bring to your attention the idea of really making sure whatever roof goes on there and whatever detailing needs to be done gets looked at carefully. I agree that the roof needs to be replaced and that it should be prepared for something like solar. There are a few options for that. But we need to make sure that whatever we put back on there is going to be detailed well with the other roofs that are existing. And that may require some assessment by someone. It's not necessarily the contractor, though they have a lot of great ideas about these things. They're mostly going to be focused on getting the work done and not doing a design build sort of thing. If they do design build, or if somebody else comes in and assesses it and gives recommendations, both of those things are services that are outside of just replacing the roof. And I know that we've talked about this in the most recent property meeting. And I would expect that this amount of money can cover a very small fee to do an assessment. That would be a great step to making sure that 25 years can go by again and have very few issues with a new roof. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina.
Okay, I have a general question about the design.
Gus Haugen?
Gus Haugen. If the current roof, flat roof, is pitch and gravel, that's my understanding, will the replacement also be pitch and gravel or some other type of material?
The replacement roof is likely to be some other type of material because in today's price environment, the price of asphalt is out of reach.
Okay, can somebody please explain what the other alternatives are?
Dan, can you come up again, please? I've been reminded that if you're interested in what was discussed last Wednesday, it was recorded and it is available online, so you can refresh yourself on some of the discussion that was had then.
Okay. I just want to say this is odd. Not facing them, but anyway. As was discussed Thursday, there's 4 types of roof basically out there. 2 of them being a PVC type material, one being rubber and the other one being asphalt. They all carry the same life expectancy, and it'll be a choice between either or based on cost, and it'll either be the plastic material or the rubber. And as Michael said, the asphalt, the only people that are doing pitch and gravel or asphalt is the state with our tax dollars. Private people cannot afford that anymore, as Michael said.
And to clarify, this authorization empowers the Congregation Council to supervise, manage, and make decisions on the process. And we will invite people who have an interest in this to be part of our building renewal team looking at the roof to help decide some of these issues. So this will not be made in isolation. If you want to have more input, you can be part of that team. We don't have meetings set up yet, but they will be as part of developing specifications and selecting contractors.
Susan Hurlbutt. I haven't heard anybody talk about this, but I keep thinking if we've had leaks for a long time, I just wonder about mold assessment. And I keep thinking about the kids who are in there all the time. And is there a possibility that we'll find more mold and we're going to have to put more money for abatement for that? Or
I can respond to what I've heard anecdotally if any of you have expertise in this area, but my understanding is that significant mold abatement is not really feasible. We do not have significant mold at the time, but the process of assessing mold and abating it is kind of an iffy one, and we probably are not going to encounter it, and I don't know that in the process of replacing the roof we would necessarily discover any more. But if any of you have information about where mold might be and have further questions on that, you can bring that to the attention of the council.
I was just thinking that might be, if there is a possibility of it for the kids' sake, it might be better to get the roof replaced sooner rather than later.
That's one of the arguments that was presented to the Congregation Council when they decided to advance this motion now. And since the Congregation Council advanced this motion, we have in fact had a leak that damaged, or that leaked into part of the daycare center, which results in a loss of operations, and that could affect, as I mentioned in the handout, we don't want to threaten the status of having a tenant in there because a lot of our economic livelihood depends on having that rented out.
That exploration when that leak happened last week revealed no sign of previous mold. So
Pastor Peter just pointed out that when they looked at that leak last week, they didn't see any evidence of previous mold, so we're okay with that in that part of the building.
Kim Wetland. I support the moving forward with the motion because it empowers the people who are looking into the alternatives and what's best for the church. It empowers them to move forward to get the best options available to us to move forward on repairing the roof. If we don't move forward, we're still just asking a bunch of questions and have the threat of serious leaks, which could cause mold and could cause these bigger problems. As I understand it, the motion put forth today is simply moving us in a direction where we are able to get the information that we need to make the decision about how to repair the roof. Is that right? Sort of?
That's correct. However, this authorization would empower the Congregation Council to make that decision so that we can lock in the contractor.
Hi, Anna Miller. Quick question on timeline. This may be more for Dan Newyar or other folks on the property committee. They mentioned a 7-14 day. Estimates are not good for a lengthy period of time. And assuming this goes forward, we get approval today, there's money set aside, we can move forward with this project. Do we have any anticipation of a timeline for getting multiple contracts in to put in estimates, bids on the project? And when would this project potentially begin? I'm hoping yet this summer, so we have good weather for the process.
I can say that the Congregation Council will move immediately to start that process to the extent that the council needs to. We'll do it via electronic vote if necessary. Russ, do you have a sense of how long it will take to identify and solicit bids from contractors? To repeat what Russ is saying, he doubts it'll happen before fall. We're in the season now. We may be lucky to even get it done this year because contractors are busy, but this gives us a shot. What if it can't get done until next year? Based on the discussions from the experts we have in-house, we can continue to patch as necessary and position ourselves to take advantage of whatever timing it takes in the spring to get something going. That's not ideal because we could end up with a major leak over the winter.
Paul Sponheim has a question.
Pardon me? Oh.
It is written. I would like clarification of the motion from the word.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes. Tell him yes.
Yes, Paul.
Okay. My question is about the motion from the word pursuant. Can you clarify how that funding plan is to be developed? Has there been a start on that? Is there a structure that we have in place to make that plan available? So the portion of the motion from the word pursuant.
Okay, I would pursuant in this case means following from. That
Yes.
is to say, it'll be based upon a strategy that we work out next fall. And this kind of goes back to what I said in my remarks to you earlier. We need to have these conversations as a congregation. We have about a dozen or so other pending projects, including possibly solar. We have a handful of projects that are still pending from the proposals submitted to the Generosity Committee. We have issues to resolve in terms of stewardship. We have to have a big conversation about this and something, the best we can do it, a comprehensive strategy that will carry us forward a few years. And escrow money we need to take care of future needs. That's big work, and that's why we can't make it right now. So stay tuned. We will have those conversations. The Congregation Council will be looking at, has been looking at these, has been looking at all the projects, trying to get to that comprehensive plan, and we just don't have the information or haven't had the discussions yet. And I should say that the Liberating Structures for Mission that the Senate project is helping us with will help us get some tools in our decision-making process. So we should be able to do that a little more efficiently than we have in the past.
Please, let's not have anyone confused. I support this motion 100%. And if it wasn't on the floor to be voted on, I would make that move now. I was just pointing out that once we do have that movement, we still could have some other discussion on alternatives.
That's true. And based on your earlier discussions, Dan, we'll take it under advisement in whatever group forms to help develop specifications and make decisions on the roof, that there may be options that don't include preparedness for solar, although I don't know what those might be. But we'll keep that in mind too. Thank you. Do I hear other discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call for a vote on the motion. All in favor signify by raising your hand.
Paper ballot is my vote.
Oh, so you do have a paper ballot? I thought we were going to do a voice vote on this one.
I've got that as a paper ballot because we did the voice on the budget. We can do it as
We don't. Yeah, we don't need to, no.
Okay.
The paper ballot was based on in case we needed it.
Talk into the microphone.
Okay, so we do have to count, so we'll have Deb Cordes, and we have the person to be a teller. We're not doing ballots simply because it's so complicated with the Zoom audience. We can do. If you're in the car, could you put your hand outside the car? All in favor?
And chop it off.
Hands in the back. You counted me? Zoomers, 1, 2, 3, 4 on Zoom.
And okay, we recorded the ayes. All opposed? Same sign. Do you see any opposed online? Any abstentions? The tellers are reporting that the vote is unanimous in favor, that the motion has carried. Thank you all for your attention and participation, and I will now call on Pastor Betsy Hoyam for, we have a, turning the mic over to Deb Cordes.
I just wanted to make a statement. This last year's been tough. The pastors, the staff did an amazing job. And I know we clapped vigorously for Chris, and I think our pastors and our staff, I'd just like to give them a round of applause.
The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we give you thanks for this opportunity to come together in person. Thank you for the beauty of the surroundings, for the sky, the trees, the sunshine, the birds singing, and for this discussion that we have had here today. Guide us forward in this process. And let us pray together as Jesus taught us. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial, and deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen.
I now call for a motion to adjourn. Miller? Wetland? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody who's on Zoom with us today. Great to be with you. We'll be signing off now.